Millionaire entered into arranged marriage, believing his bride was ugly, but was shocked by her. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. Your support means everything to this channel. Now, let's discover how a single moment at the altar changed everything for two strangers bound by duty. Marcus Ashford adjusted his platinum cufflinks for the third time in 5 minutes. His reflection stared back from the mahogany-framed mirror of the cathedral's preparation room. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from building a tech empire worth $3 billion. But today felt different. "Sir, it's time," his assistant whispered through the door. Marcus straightened his Italian silk tie, a nervous habit he'd developed since childhood. The arranged marriage had been his grandfather's dying wish, a merger between two powerful families that would secure the Ashford legacy for generations. Old money meeting new money. He'd agreed without hesitation. After all, marriage was just another business transaction to him. What bothered him wasn't the arrangement itself. It was what he'd heard about his bride, Eleanor Whitmore. The whispers had followed him for months. Plain Jane, they called her. The family disappointment. Some even cruelly suggested she had facial deformities hidden behind makeup and strategic photography. His own mother had been diplomatic but clear. "She's not what you'd expect from the Whitmore bloodline, darling. But her dowry is substantial and, frankly, looks fade." Money doesn't. Marcus had seen only one photograph. A blurry image from a charity event where Eleanor stood in the shadows, her face partially obscured by poor lighting and an unfortunate angle. Even his private investigator had struggled to find recent, clear images of her. The cathedral doors opened, and 200 guests turned to face him. Old money aristocrats, tech moguls, politicians, everyone who mattered in their world. The organ began its traditional march, and Marcus took his position at the altar. He scanned the crowd briefly. Business partners, rivals, society columnists already typing on their phones. This wedding would be front-page news in the financial section tomorrow. His best man leaned over. "Ready for this, brother?" Marcus nodded, though his palms were slightly damp inside his leather gloves. He'd negotiated hostile takeovers worth hundreds of millions. Closed deals that made grown men weep. But something about this moment felt monumentally different. The music shifted to the bridal march. Every head turned toward the cathedral entrance, and Marcus found himself holding his breath despite his usual composure. He'd prepared himself for disappointment, for the awkwardness of pretending attraction he didn't feel, for years of maintaining appearances while living separate lives. The massive oak doors swung open dramatically. A figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. The traditional white gown caught the light, creating an almost ethereal glow around the bride's form. But as Eleanor began her walk down the aisle, as the sunlight shifted and her features became visible, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his first $1 million deal: complete and utter shock. The woman walking toward him was breathtaking, not just beautiful, stunning in a way that made his chest tighten, and his carefully controlled world suddenly feel unstable. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo that revealed a graceful neck. Her posture spoke of confidence and breeding. And her face was flawless. High cheekbones, full lips curved in a subtle smile, and eyes that seemed to sparkle with intelligence and mystery. This wasn't the plain, unremarkable woman he'd been told to expect. This was a goddess. Marcus felt his knees weaken slightly as Eleanor approached the altar, her gaze meeting his for the first time. There was something in her expression. Surprise? Recognition? A hint of amusement that suggested she knew exactly what he'd been thinking. The congregation seemed to sense the electric tension between them. Whispers rippled through the pews as guests realized they were witnessing something unexpected. As Eleanor reached the altar and took her position beside him, Marcus caught a subtle fragrance, jasmine and vanilla, that made his head spin. Up close, she was even more magnificent. Her skin was porcelain smooth, her lips naturally rose-colored, and those eyes, those incredible green eyes, held depths that suggested years of hidden secrets. The priest began the ceremony, but Marcus barely heard the words. His mind was racing with one burning question that threatened to consume him completely. If Eleanor Whitmore was this beautiful, why had everyone lied to him about her appearance? The ceremony continued in a blur of traditional vows and exchanged rings, but Marcus couldn't focus on anything except the mystery standing beside him in white silk. Eleanor's responses were confident and clear, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made his pulse quicken. When the priest announced they could kiss, Marcus hesitated for just a moment, meeting Eleanor's gaze with questioning eyes. She smiled softly and stepped closer, whispering so quietly only he could hear, "Don't overthink it, husband." The kiss was brief but electric, and when they separated, Marcus saw something flicker across Eleanor's face. Relief, triumph. He couldn't be sure. The reception hall buzzed with confused energy. Guests who had expected to witness a dutiful but loveless union were instead watching what appeared to be genuine chemistry between two strangers. The society photographers were having a field day, capturing every stolen glance and subtle smile between the newlyweds. Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying Eleanor's company during dinner. She was intelligent, witty, and surprisingly knowledgeable about his business ventures. When she made an insightful comment about emerging markets in Southeast Asia, he nearly choked on his champagne. "You seem surprised," Eleanor observed, raising an elegant eyebrow. I didn't expect—" Marcus struggled to find diplomatic words. "You didn't expect me to have a brain?" Eleanor's tone was light, but there was steel underneath. "Or you didn't expect me to be capable of basic conversation?" Before Marcus could respond, his cousin David appeared at their table, clearly intoxicated and lacking any filter. "Well, well, Marcus," David announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Looks like the family rumors were completely wrong about your bride. She's absolutely gorgeous. Makes you wonder why everyone said she was, well, you know?" Eleanor's smile never wavered, but Marcus noticed her grip tighten slightly on her champagne flute. "What rumors?" Marcus asked carefully, though ice was forming in his stomach. David laughed obliviously. "Come on, cousin. Everyone's been saying for months that Eleanor was the ugly duckling of the Whitmore family. Plain as paper, they said. Some even suggested she had some kind of facial scarring or deformity. Your mother was practically apologetic about the whole arrangement." The color drained from Eleanor's face, but she maintained her composure with practiced grace. Marcus felt fury building in his chest, not at Eleanor, but at the lies he'd been told. "David, perhaps you should—" "The best part," David continued, completely missing the tension, "is that your grandfather probably arranged this thinking you'd be grateful for any wife, even an unattractive one. But joke's on everyone, you hit the jackpot." Eleanor stood slowly, her movement so controlled it was almost frightening. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I need some air." As Eleanor walked away with dignity intact, Marcus grabbed David's arm roughly. "What the hell is wrong with you?" He hissed, but the damage was done. Eleanor had heard everything. And now Marcus realized the horrible truth. Everyone in his family, everyone in his circle, had conspired to convince him that his bride would be unattractive. They had lied to him, but more importantly, they had probably lied to her too. Marcus followed Eleanor onto the garden terrace, where she stood with her back to him, staring at the city lights beyond the country club grounds. "Eleanor," he began softly. She turned, and for the first time all evening her mask slipped. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice remained steady. "How long have you believed I was ugly, Marcus?" The question hit him like a physical blow. The things I was told. Answer me." Her voice was quiet but commanding. "How long have you been dreading this day because you thought you were marrying someone repulsive?" Marcus felt shame wash over him in waves. "Months," he admitted. "But Eleanor, I swear to you, the moment I saw you today, everything changed." Eleanor's laugh was bitter. How convenient. She moved closer, and Marcus could see the hurt and anger warring in her expression. "Do you want to know the truth, Marcus? Do you want to know why everyone told you I was ugly?" Before he could answer, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her face went completely white. "What is it?" Marcus asked, genuinely concerned. Eleanor looked up at him with an expression that sent chills down his spine. Part fear, part rage, and part something else he couldn't identify. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "But not here. Too many people. Too many lies already told." She started walking toward the main building, then paused and looked back at him. "The person who orchestrated all of this? Who made sure you believed I was hideous? Who probably told my family you were expecting a business arrangement with an unattractive bride?" Marcus felt his world tilting. "Who?" Eleanor's green eyes blazed with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Someone who wanted to ensure we'd both be miserable. Someone who had everything to gain from a loveless Ashford marriage." The sound of footsteps on gravel made them both turn. A figure was approaching through the garden shadows. Someone who had been listening to their entire conversation. The figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing Marcus's mother, Victoria Ashford, in her elegant black evening gown. Her smile was perfectly composed, but her eyes held a coldness that made Eleanor instinctively step closer to Marcus. "Such a lovely conversation," Victoria said smoothly. Though perhaps a bit dramatic for a wedding night, Marcus felt his jaw clench. "Mother, what are you doing out here?" "Making sure my son understands the complexities of his new situation." Victoria's gaze moved between them like a predator assessing prey. "Eleanor, dear, you look stunning tonight. Quite different from the photographs we've all been seeing." "What photographs?" Eleanor demanded, her voice sharp. Victoria reached into her small evening clutch and withdrew her phone, scrolling through images with practiced ease. "Why, these ones, of course." She turned the screen toward them, revealing a series of photos that made Eleanor gasp audibly. The images showed a woman who shared Eleanor's basic features but looked completely different. Hair unkempt, makeup smudged, clothing wrinkled and ill-fitting. The woman in the photos appeared tired, disheveled, and frankly, unattractive. "Where did you get these?" Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. Victoria's smile widened. "Oh, darling, these have been circulating for months. Everyone who matters has seen them. The Whitmore family disgrace, they called you. Some suggested you had developed a drinking problem. Others wondered about drug use." Marcus snatched the phone from his mother's hands, studying the images more closely. Something was wrong. The lighting, the angles, the quality, these looked manipulated. "These are fake," he said flatly. "Are they?" Victoria's tone was innocent, but her eyes glittered with malice. "How can you be sure? After all, you'd never met your bride before today. For all you knew, she really was the family disappointment everyone said she was." Eleanor was staring at the images with growing horror. "These aren't just fake. They're made from my social media photos. Someone took my pictures and altered them to make me look pathetic," Victoria finished helpfully. "The word you're looking for is pathetic." Marcus felt rage building in his chest like a volcano preparing to erupt. "You did this. You created these images and spread them around our circles." "I protected my family," Victoria replied without a trace of remorse. "Do you have any idea what the Whitmore girl was really like before today? Confident, beautiful, intelligent. The kind of woman who might actually make you happy. And happy husbands, Marcus, don't always make the best business decisions." The truth hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. "You wanted me to be miserable. I wanted you to be focused," Victoria corrected. "A loveless marriage would have kept your attention on the company, on the empire your grandfather built, on the responsibilities you inherited. But this," she gestured between Marcus and Eleanor. "This threatens everything." Eleanor stepped forward, her earlier composure replaced by cold fury. "What did you tell my family about Marcus?" Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, my dear, that was even easier. Your parents received anonymous tips suggesting Marcus was, shall we say, physically abusive to women, that he had unusual sexual preferences that might be dangerous, that this marriage was his last chance to appear respectable before certain scandals broke." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "You made Eleanor's family think I was a monster. I made sure both families entered this arrangement with appropriately low expectations," Victoria said proudly. "Eleanor's parents were relieved someone would take their damaged daughter off their hands. Your side was grateful you were willing to sacrifice yourself for the family legacy. Everyone should have been properly miserable." Eleanor's hands were shaking with rage. "You destroyed our reputations, made us both believe we were entering a nightmare. Also, Marcus would be focused on business. The Ashford empire is worth $12 billion, dear girl. Personal happiness is a luxury we can't afford. Marcus looked at his new wife, really looked at her, and saw not just beauty, but strength, intelligence, and a spirit that his mother's lies had tried to break. Eleanor had walked down that aisle today believing she was marrying someone who might hurt her. And he had approached the altar thinking he was sacrificing himself to duty. Both of them had been brave in ways they'd never imagined. "You're done," Marcus said quietly to his mother. "Whatever power you think you have in this family, whatever influence you believe you wield, it ends tonight." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Marcus, you don't understand the bigger picture." "No," Eleanor interrupted, stepping forward with regal composure. "You don't understand. You tried to manipulate us, tried to ensure we'd be miserable, tried to control Marcus through loneliness and duty." She moved closer to Victoria, and despite being younger and smaller, suddenly seemed like the more powerful woman. "But you made one critical mistake in your calculations." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "And what was that?" Eleanor smiled, and it was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "You gave us a common enemy." Before Victoria could respond, Eleanor's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the message and her expression shifted to something Marcus couldn't quite read. "We need to go," Eleanor said urgently. "Now, what's wrong?" Marcus asked. Eleanor looked between him and Victoria, her green eyes blazing with an intensity that made his heart race. "Your mother wasn't working alone. And whoever helped her just made their next move." The sound of sirens in the distance made them all freeze. The sirens grew louder as 3 police cars pulled into the country club's circular driveway, their flashing lights casting red and blue shadows across the reception windows. Marcus felt Eleanor's hand slip into his, her fingers cold but steady. Victoria's face had gone pale, but she maintained her aristocratic composure. "This is quite dramatic even for you, Eleanor." Through the garden entrance, Marcus could see guests gathering at the windows, phones out and recording. The society photographers were having the night of their careers. A tall detective in a dark suit approached them, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Mrs. Eleanor Ashford?" Eleanor stepped forward. "Yes, I'm Detective Rodriguez. We need to speak with you about charges that have been filed against you this evening." Marcus felt the world tilt. "What charges?" The detective consulted his notepad. "Fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit extortion. The complaint was filed approximately 30 minutes ago by..." He glanced up. "Victoria Ashford and Harold Whitmore." Eleanor's hand tightened in Marcus's grip, but her voice remained steady. "Harold Whitmore is my father." "Yes, ma'am. The complaint alleges that you assumed a false identity to defraud the Ashford family through this marriage arrangement." Victoria stepped forward, her mask finally dropping to reveal pure venom. "The woman Marcus married tonight isn't Eleanor Whitmore. She's an imposter. The con artist who somehow eliminated the real Eleanor and took her place." Marcus stared at his mother in disbelief. "That's insane, is it?" Victoria pulled out her phone again, showing more images to the detective. "These are photos of the real Eleanor Whitmore, the woman who was supposed to marry my son. Notice the difference?" The detective studied the doctored images Victoria had shown them earlier, then looked at Eleanor with professional skepticism. Eleanor's composure finally cracked slightly. "Those photos are fake. Digitally altered versions of my real pictures." "That's what an imposter would say," Victoria replied smoothly. "Detective, I have documentation, witnesses, proof that this woman is not who she claims to be." From her evening clutch, Victoria produced a manila folder that seemed far too large to have fit inside. Marcus realized with growing horror that his mother had planned this entire confrontation. "Birth certificate showing Eleanor Whitmore died in a car accident 6 months ago," Victoria announced, handing documents to the detective. Witness statements from Whitmore family staff claiming this woman appeared suddenly and somehow convinced the family she was their daughter despite significant differences in appearance. Eleanor was shaking now, but with rage rather than fear. "My own father filed these charges?" "Your supposed father," Victoria corrected, "is a victim of your elaborate con game." The detective was studying the paperwork with a frown. "Mrs. Ashford, do you have identification proving your identity?" Eleanor reached for her evening clutch, then stopped. Her face went white as she realized something. My purse. It's not here. I left it in the bridal suite. Victoria smiled triumphantly. How convenient. The imposter's fake identification is mysteriously unavailable. Marcus stepped between the detective and Eleanor, his protective instincts overwhelming his confusion. This is ridiculous. I can vouch for my wife's identity. Actually, sir, you can't, the detective said apologetically. You stated earlier that tonight was the first time you'd met the alleged Mrs. Ashford in person. You can't verify her identity any more than we can. Eleanor looked up at Marcus with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. Marcus, there are things about tonight, about this arrangement, that you don't understand yet. Then explain them, Marcus said desperately. But before Eleanor could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. That won't be necessary. Everyone turned as a distinguished older man approached through the garden. Marcus recognized him immediately. Harold Whitmore, one of the most powerful men in American finance. Eleanor's father. Harold's expression was grim as he addressed the detective. I need to retract the charges I filed tonight. Victoria's confident demeanor cracked. Harold, we discussed this. We discussed nothing. Harold's voice boomed with authority. You manipulated me into filing false charges against my own daughter. The detective looked confused. Sir, you're saying this woman is Eleanor Whitmore? Harold moved to Eleanor's side, and Marcus could see the family resemblance clearly now. The same intelligent green eyes, the same proud bearing. This is absolutely my daughter, Harold confirmed. And Victoria Ashford, you are about to face consequences you never imagined. Victoria's face was now completely white. Harold, you don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Harold turned to address Marcus directly. Son, your mother came to me 6 months ago with a proposition. She said you needed to marry Eleanor to secure both our family fortunes, but that you were reluctant about the arrangement. Marcus felt sick. What did she tell you? That you had specifically requested an unattractive bride because you weren't interested in love or physical intimacy. That you wanted a purely business arrangement with someone who wouldn't threaten your focus on work. Eleanor made a small sound of pain, and Marcus realized how deeply his mother's lies had wounded both their families. Harold continued grimly. Victoria convinced me that Eleanor's beauty would be problematic for you. She suggested we needed to manage your expectations by making you believe Eleanor was plain or even unattractive. So you agreed to spread lies about your own daughter? Marcus asked, horrified. I thought I was protecting her, Harold's voice broke slightly. I thought, if you expected less, you might be kinder to her. If you thought she was damaged goods, you might not demand too much from the marriage. Victoria was backing away slowly, realizing her web of lies was unraveling completely. But tonight, Harold continued, I received some very interesting phone calls. It seems Victoria has been playing a much deeper game than any of us realized. The detective was still holding the false documentation. Sir, these papers claiming your daughter died in a car accident are complete fabrications, Harold confirmed. And I believe we're about to discover that Victoria Ashford has committed several federal crimes in her attempt to control my son-in-law. Eleanor suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm, her grip almost painful. Marcus, where's your grandfather's will? The original document? Marcus frowned. In the family safe, why? Eleanor's eyes were blazing with realization. Because I don't think your marriage to me was just about securing the family legacy. I think it was about preventing you from discovering something your grandfather left behind. Victoria turned and ran toward the parking lot, her high heels clicking desperately against the stone pathway. But as she reached the edge of the garden, 2 more figures stepped out of the shadows to block her escape route. And Marcus realized this night was far from over. The 2 figures blocking Victoria's escape were FBI agents, their badges gleaming under the garden lights. Special Agent Jennifer Torres stepped forward, her voice carrying absolute authority. Victoria Ashford, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. As the agents moved to apprehend his mother, Marcus felt Eleanor's hand squeeze his supportively. The woman he'd married just hours ago, the woman his mother had tried to convince him was ugly and worthless, was proving to be his strongest ally. "This is impossible," Victoria protested as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "I've done nothing illegal." Agent Torres smiled grimly. "Creating false documents, manipulating bank records, and attempting to defraud two prominent families. That's just the beginning, Mrs. Ashford." Harold Whitmore approached Marcus and Eleanor, his expression mixing paternal concern with businesslike determination. "There's something both of you need to know about tonight. About why Victoria was so desperate to control this marriage." Detective Rodriguez was still processing the rapid turn of events. "Mr. Whitmore, do you want to proceed with pressing charges against Mrs. Victoria Ashford for filing false police reports?" "Absolutely," Harold confirmed. "But that's the least of her problems." Eleanor looked between her father and Marcus with growing understanding. This was never just about controlling Marcus's happiness. This was about the inheritance, wasn't it? Harold nodded grimly. "Your grandfather's will, Marcus, contained a very specific clause that Victoria hoped you'd never discover." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What clause?" Agent Torres approached with a tablet showing them financial records. "Mr. Ashford, your mother has been systematically embezzling from your family's charitable foundation for the past 3 years. She's stolen over $40 million. Eleanor gasped audibly. But Marcus found himself oddly unsurprised. His mother's lifestyle had always exceeded what he'd assumed were her financial means. "The inheritance clause," Harold continued, "stated that if you married within 5 years of your grandfather's death, and if that marriage was based on genuine affection, rather than pure business arrangement, you would gain complete control over all family assets, including the authority to audit all previous financial management." The pieces clicked into place for Marcus with devastating clarity. She needed me to be miserable, to ensure the marriage looked like a business transaction rather than a love match. "Exactly," Eleanor added, her voice gaining strength. "If you'd been happy, if we'd genuinely cared for each other, you would have eventually gained access to financial records that would have exposed her theft." Victoria, now in handcuffs, turned toward them with one last desperate play. "You fools have no idea what you've done. The Ashford empire will collapse without proper management. Marcus is too soft, too emotional. He'll destroy everything his grandfather built." Agent Torres consulted her notes. "Mrs. Ashford, we also have evidence that you hired hackers to create the false images of Mrs. Eleanor Ashford, paid bribes to staff members in both households to spread rumors, and even attempted to hire someone to cause Eleanor actual physical harm to make her match the fake photographs." Eleanor went very still. "You tried to have me injured?" Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. "You were going to ruin everything. Beautiful women make men stupid. Happy men make bad business decisions. I was protecting the family legacy." Marcus stepped toward his mother, his voice deadly quiet. "You tried to have my wife hurt. She's not your wife," Victoria screamed. "This whole marriage is a sham. You don't even know her." Eleanor moved gracefully to Marcus's side, her presence calming his rage. "She's right about one thing," Eleanor said quietly. "We don't really know each other yet." Marcus looked down at her, seeing not just beauty, but incredible strength. "What do you mean?" Eleanor smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. "I mean, everything that brought us together tonight was based on lies and manipulation. But everything we choose to do from this moment forward, that's completely up to us." She turned to face the crowd of wedding guests who had gathered to witness the dramatic confrontation, their phones still recording every moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor announced in a voice that carried across the garden, "you've all witnessed something unusual tonight. A marriage that began with deception, but perhaps, just perhaps, might end with something real." Marcus felt his heart skip as Eleanor continued. "My husband and I have just learned that we were both lied to, manipulated, set up to believe the worst about each other. But here's what I know to be true." She looked up at Marcus with eyes that seemed to see straight into his soul. "Marcus Ashford is nothing like what I was told to expect. He's protected me tonight, stood by me when he had every reason to doubt, and shown more integrity in a few hours than some people manage in a lifetime." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Marcus found himself speaking without conscious thought. And Eleanor. Eleanor is the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Beautiful, yes, but more than that. She's brave. She's intelligent. She's everything I never dared to hope for. Agent Torres cleared her throat diplomatically. This is very touching, but we do need to process Mrs. Victoria Ashford and continue our investigation. As Victoria was led away toward the police cars, she turned back one final time. "This isn't over," she called out. "You'll see. You'll both see what a mistake this is." But Marcus found he wasn't listening to his mother's threats. He was completely focused on Eleanor, who was looking up at him with an expression that made his pulse race. "So," Eleanor said softly, just for him, "what happens now? We're legally married to each other, but we're essentially strangers who've just survived a battle together." Marcus considered the question seriously. Around them, the chaos was continuing. Police cars, FBI agents, shocked wedding guests, society photographers capturing every moment. But in the middle of all that insanity, he felt an unexpected sense of peace. "I have a proposal," he said, unable to suppress a slight smile. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Another one?" "We just got married." Marcus laughed, genuinely laughed, as for the first time in months. "I propose we start over. Forget everything we were told about each other. Forget all the lies and manipulation, and get to know each other for real." Eleanor's smile was like sunrise. "I'd like that very much." But as they stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of Victoria's schemes, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows of the country club's main building. Someone who had been conspicuously absent from the evening's revelations. Someone who still had secrets that could change everything. 3 months later, Marcus sat in his penthouse office reviewing the financial reports that had finally revealed the full extent of his mother's crimes. $43 million in embezzled funds, dozens of forged documents, a network of bribery and corruption that had taken federal investigators weeks to tangle. But Victoria Ashford's conviction was no longer the most important thing in his life. Eleanor appeared in his office doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile that had become his favorite sight in the world. She'd moved into his penthouse 2 weeks after their wedding night, not because they had to, but because they'd wanted to. "Any word from the prosecutors?" Eleanor asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Marcus nodded grimly. 22 years federal prison. "She'll be eligible for parole in 14. Eleanor reached across the desk to take his hand. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I know she's still your mother." "She stopped being my mother the night she tried to have you hurt," Marcus replied quietly. "Agent Torres said they found communications with someone who was supposed to cause you to have an accident that would leave permanent facial scarring." Eleanor squeezed his fingers supportively. "But it didn't happen. We're both here. We're both safe. And we've built something real together." It was true. The past 3 months had been a revelation for both of them. Without the pressure of lies and false expectations, they'd discovered a genuine compatibility that surprised everyone, including themselves. Marcus was more relaxed than his employees had ever seen him. Eleanor had returned to her work as an art curator with renewed confidence, and their marriage had become the subject of fascinated speculation in society circles. "There's something I want to show you," Eleanor said, producing a manila envelope from her briefcase. Marcus raised an eyebrow as she handed him official-looking documents. "What's this?" Eleanor's smile was mysterious. "Open it." Marcus scanned the papers, his expression shifting from curiosity to amazement. Eleanor, these are adoption papers for the Whitmore Children's Foundation," Eleanor confirmed. "I've been working with your legal team to establish it using part of the recovered funds from your mother's embezzlement. We can provide homes for over 200 children in the first year alone." Marcus stared at his wife with growing awe. "You used my mother's stolen money to help children?" "Our mother's stolen money," Eleanor corrected gently. "We're married, remember? Your family drama is my family drama now." Marcus came around the desk and pulled Eleanor into his arms, kissing her with the passion that had developed naturally between them over the past months. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I can't believe I'm saying that about an arranged marriage, but Eleanor, I'm completely, desperately in love with you. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with tears and laughter. I love you too. And Marcus, yes? I have one more surprise. She reached into her purse and produced a small velvet box that made Marcus's heart stop. Eleanor, what? You gave me your grandmother's engagement ring on our wedding night because it was tradition, Eleanor said softly. But I want to give you something I chose specifically for you. Something that represents what we've built together, rather than what other people planned for us. Inside the box was a platinum wedding band, elegantly simple but engraved with words that made Marcus's chest tighten with emotion. From lies to love, Eleanor. Will you marry me, Marcus Ashford? Eleanor asked with a grin. For real this time, with no manipulation, no false expectations, and no one else's agenda? Marcus laughed, lifting Eleanor off her feet and spinning her around his office while she giggled like a teenager. Yes, he said, setting her down and sliding the ring onto his finger beside his original wedding band. Yes, I'll marry you, again, as many times as you want. As they kissed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through his office windows, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. They'd started as strangers bound by duty, survived manipulation and lies that could have destroyed them, and somehow found real love in the wreckage of other people's schemes. 6 months later, they held their second wedding, this one planned entirely by themselves, attended only by people who genuinely cared about their happiness. Eleanor wore a dress she'd chosen herself. Marcus wrote vows that came from his heart rather than tradition. And when the priest pronounced them husband and wife for the second time, everyone present knew they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. True love that had grown from the ashes of deception. As they danced their first dance as a genuinely married couple, Eleanor whispered in Marcus's ear, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if your mother's plan had worked? If we'd both been miserable?" Marcus considered the question seriously, then smiled. "I think we still would have found each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be." Eleanor leaned back to look into his eyes. "Even if we'd never met?" Marcus pulled her closer, his voice full of certainty. "Especially then. Love this real, love this strong. It finds a way." The song ended, and their guests erupted in applause.